Starbound is a sandbox game that allows you to do a ton of activities. You get to fight monsters, go through a story, build some stuff, play an arcade game, become a landlord, employ a space crew, upgrade a spaceship, explore alien planets, do challenge rooms, become a cook, play a crappy song, capture monsters like it's Pokemon, collect books, do side quests, build in mechs, and fight in mechs? How is this not the best game of all time? Well, the problem with Starbound is that it has all of these really cool activities to do in the game, but none of them build off of each other in meaningful or substantial ways that most video games do, which leads to Starbound feeling as though it's missing something. And that thing is a lack of focus. To understand what I mean when I say Starbound has a lack of focus, we first need to understand game design and learn how games build mechanics off of other mechanics. Take, for example, Super Mario Bros., everyone's favorite platformer of all time. Every single tile, platform, hole, enemy, all of them are built around the central mechanics that the player has control of. That being running and jumping. All of the levels in Super Mario Bros. Are deliberately designed with these two mechanics in mind. This is shown by the fact that the game gets harder over the course of the game. We can clearly see that later levels in Mario are harder and harder with more precise jumps, but that's because they expect the player to be able to jump through those hurdles. This shows us that Mario Bros. Is focused around its two main gameplay mechanics, jumping and running. Thus, it is a far more focused and fun experience. But imagine, if you will, we have a 3D platformer where you can do 20 actions, say, jump around, backflip, front flip, side flip, do whatever, turn into a pig. But then the only mechanic that's needed to beat the game is the run button because the star or collectible item is right in front of the player. So what's the point of having these 20 other interactive ways with the game if there's only one way to beat the game that's not fun or interesting? If you couldn't guess, that latter example is the problem with Starbound. Starbound just has so many things to do, but it wouldn't even be a bad thing if they were all polished and focused on something, a central focus. But it doesn't. Or I guess it's better to say that it tries to have a central focus, but fails miserably. After playing Starbound for... Here, let me check. Oh my god. I think there are 3 kind of central focuses that the developers wanted to implement, but failed to structure their game around these 3 attempted focuses. Those attempted focuses are combat, building, and exploration. Looking through all of these attempted central focuses reveals that they're not really focuses, since these 3 ideas keep constantly bashing heads with each other. Take, for example, the combat. The combat is fun, you know, you kill dudes, but what does building do to affect combat? Nothing. Building does nothing towards furthering combat. Likewise, combat does nothing to further building. And combat doesn't really help with exploration either. Like, in maybe one case it could possibly, because you gotta get some like organic fiber, but that's about it. Compare that to Terraria, where building actually has an effect on combat. Building houses for your villagers or villages nets the player rewards like tools, weapons, armor, protection. The reason why Terraria's building mechanics feel far more complete and focused is because Terraria does have a central focus on combat. And since the building helps the combat, thus it is a far more fun and cohesive experience, because you're not just doing some random building. No, you're building because it helps you beat the game. Thus, Terraria's building feels far more focused and refined than Starbound's, even though Starbound's building in some ways is better than Terraria's. This shows that Starbound doesn't really have a central focus compared to many other sandbox games like Terraria. There is no significant structure that unifies Starbound's central focuses together. However, I should probably point out that in some minor ways, yes, these focuses build off each other, but they're not really substantial or even necessary. They're just kinda there. Let's take, for example, ability. abilities. In Starbound, if you trade in 10 bronze, 10 silver, and 10 gold, you can unlock these abilities that allow you to more easily traverse the world, if you will. You got a dash, you got a double jump, and you got Metroid ball. The intended use for these abilities is to most likely traverse the world through these with these specific ball types and dash types. It seems evident that is the intended purpose, but in the same breath and looking through previous trailers, it's also clear that there was an intention of having abilities play roles in combat and have role in combat. Take for example the dash. The dash allows melee builds to get up in close and deal a lot of damage, right? The problem is you can't have it be too good or else it will be broken and melee builds will just become the most overpowered thing in the game. So what do you have to do? You have to significantly nerf the dashing, which screws over both the combat and the exploration, which means that both get hurt by this system being in the game, which means that melee builds are completely irrelevant, and this is all to show that while technically this system of abilities does link in between both combat and exploration, the bond is either hurting the game or provides such a minuscule impact to both of these potential central focuses that I don't really think that it's worth calling them central focuses, which leads to this game not really being particularly well at anything and feeling like it's just kind of nothing. And that right there is why Starbound failed as a sandbox game, or even as a normal video game, because it didn't polish its mechanics, it just added more mechanics. Instead of trying to tighten up the combat or make abilities work with the combat or have building support the combat in very meaningful ways, it leaves the people who play Starbound feeling like they've accomplished or have done nothing. Compared to Starbound's sandbox contemporaries like Minecraft, Terraria, or even 7 Days to Die, games with polished and focused core ideas, Starbound just can't compare. It is one of the weakest and most disappointing games I've ever played, and it's all because Starbound tried to be everything when it only needed to be something.
Word up, Yoshi Sormunchakupas is my name and I'ma tell you how I beat the IRS at their own game. I lied on my tax forms.